Night 2 on the race for the White House. Welcome. Glad you're here. We are fast, hope to be smart, and I'll guarantee you we are the place for politics. What we've got is a panel that comes to play. Air America's Rachel Maddow, the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson, both MSNBC political analysts, NBC News political director Chuck Todd, and the host of Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough. We begin, as we do every night, with everyone's take on the most important political story of the day, the headline. I'm going to start us off here tonight. Barack Obama's speech was a bold gamble. He condemned Reverend Wright's angry, inflammatory rhetoric, but stood up for his former pastor as an important spokesman in the black community. Watch.
The church contains in full the kindness and cruelty, the fierce intelligence and the shocking ignorance, the struggles and successes, the love, and yes, the bitterness and biases that make up the black experience in America.
On the one hand, Obama stuck to his transcendent political appeal, talking about racial reconciliation. On the other hand, he urged whites to understand black anger, still embracing Reverend Wright at the end of the day, and that may scare off a lot of white voters. Rachel, what's your headline on what you heard today?
Unexpectedly for me, this story ended up really dominating what was important on the political scene. I have felt like the discussion of race in the presidential election in the last month has been superficial and counterproductive. I was not looking forward to another news cycle about race, but this speech ended up being the most challenging, confessional, nuanced, not oversimplifying treatment of race that any A-list politician has ever asked us to step up to the plate for.
It was gutsy, right? I mean, this was not the safe speech to give.
This was not at all safe, and it implied that he believes the American people are capable of moving forward, not being stuck in the same old rut that we've been in, that we can understand shades of gray. I thought it asked a lot of us, and therefore it was historic.
Joe, what was your headline?
Well, I thought it made history, too. A very historic speech, but at the same time, Barack Obama right now is not about making history. He's about winning delegates. There is no doubt. He wowed a lot of people in Manhattan, a lot of Georgetown's people, a lot of white progressives that already supported him. The question is, how did he do in Youngstown, Ohio, and Jacksonville, Florida, with Reagan Democrats? I'm not so sure he won a lot of votes when he went through a long laundry list of black resentments, explaining why Reverend Wright had 350 years of good reasons on why to be angry. Again, what he said was true, but is it good politics? I'm not so sure, and I suspect that we'll see in the polls in Pennsylvania in the coming weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if he lost a lot of support among white, blue-collar voters.
Eugene Robinson, he didn't just talk about blacks today. What was your take?
Exactly. The headline is, he said, you want to talk about race, bring it on. And I disagree with Joe. I think he spoke directly to white working class and middle class voters on hot button issues, that they have legitimate resentments that their kids are bused across town to other schools. They have legitimate resentments when an African American has an advantage to get a job or a place in school. They have a legitimate complaint about inner city crime. These are not racist complaints. These are valid. It was an amazing speech, an amazing analysis of race in America in the 21st century. I think.
Let me get Chuck Todd in here. Chuck, what was your headline on what you heard today?
Well, that a white politician could not have given that speech today, and it goes to exactly what Gene just brought up, and that is that you had Barack Obama talking about busing and the resentment that builds in white America about having to have their kids bused, and talking about the struggles that and some of the resentment that is built in white America. The irony here is there's not a white Hillary Clinton could not have given that speech. John McCain could not have given that speech or talked specifically about that issue. And it's one of these things, and the Obama campaign hopes that some of blue-collar white America does hear this, and I think they plan to amplify it because they think that it actually is their entree.
All right, he's getting a lot of kudos here, Rachel. The bottom line was this was still a political speech. He gave this speech because he had a lot on the line. He was getting in trouble with his pastor.
Absolutely. He has to. What we have to get down to here is the political calculus. What does this mean ultimately in the next races? What does this mean toward him getting the nomination? And I think that depends a lot on us, on the pundit corps. I think that depends a lot on whether or not the American people are as smart and capable of absorbing complexity as he said that we were by giving that speech today.
Joe, you got to admit this. If people want him to stick to his brand, this was it. This was not a conventional speech. This was a guy who said, "You, the white working class guy in Youngstown, Scranton, Ohio. You can handle this truth. You can handle this conversation about race. Why do you disagree with it?
I don't disagree with it at all. I thought it was an amazing speech. I'm not talking about what ought to be. I'm talking about what is. I was inspired by the speech. I thought it was a challenging speech. But like you said off the top, David, this was a gutsy speech. This was a guy dropping back and throwing a bomb. And everybody that I've heard thus far today keeps talking about how he's making history. Well, you know what? This campaign for Barack Obama is not just about making history, it's about winning delegates. I'm reminded of Robert Kennedy going into a hotel suite during the 1960 convention, looking around the room. Some of the most powerful people in America were there. Some of the great civil rights heroes were there. And Bobby looked out around the room and he looked at his brother and he said, "How many delegates are in this room?" When the answer came back, none, he said, "Get them out. We want to talk about delegates." Right now, I'm just saying 6-7 hours after the speech, a lot of people are talking about history, but politics is a tough, dirty game. The bottom line is who wins the votes in Youngstown, Ohio, and Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Jacksonville,
Eugene Robinson,
Florida.
you just said it. You spoke to Barack Obama today. Afterward, was he sorry that he had to give this speech, that he was forced into giving this speech?
Well, he said having to give the speech was a challenging situation to be in, certainly, and I'm sure he wouldn't have asked to be put in the situation to have to explain his relationship with Reverend Wright and the incendiary remarks he had made. On the other hand, he said he saw it as an opportunity to say some things about race that blacks say privately, that whites say privately, but that they don't say to each other. And, I think that was one goal. I think, frankly, another goal was to get back in the driver's seat of this campaign. For the last couple of weeks now, he's been in the passenger seat, and other people have been driving. Hillary Clinton was driving, the pundits were driving, now he's driving again. I think he's happy.